Welcome to the American Business Podcast. I'm Kevin Deveci, your host. I'm welcoming you episode 131. We are in season 5 in the American Business Podcast. The American Business Podcast is the voice of American business. Quote of the day. As you know, we have a great partnership with missionstatements.com, and here is the quote of the day. It is impossible to live without failing at something unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you have failed by default. Today's number 28.1. That is the size of the US book publishing industry in 2022. Great. Well, we have a special guest today in the American Business Podcast. I'm going to invite our guest to our virtual stage and I'll get the conversation started. Hello, Patrick. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Kevin. Thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Well, pleasure is all mine. Thank you very much. How are you? How is your week going so far?
Week's going so far pretty good. It was an interesting week. I was in LA working with a group of leaders on Tuesday of this week, and then I flew up to San Francisco Tuesday night and worked with a group on Wednesday, and everything was going swimmingly. I was going to go back home where I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and Wednesday night we backed away from the gate, drove around for a little while. They came back. They said there's a problem with the engine. So I got to spend an extra night in San Francisco and fly home yesterday. So all good. Just had to move a few things around on the schedule, but that's life.
Well, okay. Sounds like a very happening week. That's great. Very productive.
Very productive. And,
very productive for sure.
You figure out when the plane doesn't fly, first of all, you're grateful that they didn't let it go up with an engine problem.
That is true.
But secondly, it's like, okay, well, I've got a list of things over here I've been wanting to get to. Now's the chance to do it. So
that's right. It's great. Well, how was 2025 for you? Any reflections on 2025 and your expectations for the new year?
Yeah, 2025 was a pretty crazy year for me. A couple big things happened. I put out a book. You can see it over my shoulder if you're looking online right now, but it's called Disrupt Everything and Win. And I wrote it with James Patterson, who's the world's best-selling author. You had a quote there from J.K. Rowling a few moments ago. And to the best of my knowledge, there's only 2 authors on planet Earth right now who have made over $1 billion US dollars writing books, and it's J.K. Rowling and James Patterson. So,
wow.
We put a book out last year with James Patterson. It was based on 3 years of research around it. So that was kind of great to get that book out there, hit the New York Times list, which was wonderful. And then at the same time, Jim Patterson and I signed a partnership with a company called Franklin Covey. People know them because Stephen Covey wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People back in 1989. And they do a lot of leadership development work around the world with their clients. And we signed a license agreement. So they actually built a course based on the book and launched it around the world back in November. So it's been a busy 2025, which was great. And then we just fly right into 2026. Been doing a lot of speaking, a lot of working with clients, and just kind of traveling the world. Next week, I'll be in Austin, Dallas, Phoenix, and then Virginia, DC area, and Atlanta right on the back end of that. So it's been busy, but really good year.
Yes, that sounds great. Well, let's dive deeper into our conversation, and I allow our audience to know more about you. Would you please introduce yourself and your organization to our audience and to our listeners?
Yeah, happy to do it. I think as far as introduction career-wise, I guess I'll start with family first. How's that? I'll change it up.
Sure, sounds great. Absolutely.
So, I've been married. It'll be 35 years this coming summer. We met when I was 5. No, we met in college and got married. And 35 years ago, we have 2 children. They're both adults. Our daughter's in her 30s. Our son's right toward the end of his 20s. They're both married.
Congratulations.
And,
That's great.
It's great.
As parents, absolutely.
When our son got married a couple of years ago, I was his best man, which is a pretty cool thing, right? That's like something you never put on your list. Like, I hope to someday.
That is true. Who knew, right? Yes, that's
exactly.
true.
And people would be like, what, doesn't he have any friends? No, he had friends and he still chose me. And I have 2 grandchildren, which they live only a couple miles away, which is awesome. And then as far as work goes, career goes, I joined the military pretty early in life. I was 17 when I enlisted in the National Guard. And then after college, I went on.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah. It was a pleasure to do it. I'm glad to do it. And it was a great experience for me because I wasn't really going anywhere in life. And I think the military helped me out in that regard. So I was in the military on active duty from 1991 to 1997. I went through infantry school and airborne school and ranger school. So I jumped out of planes and ran around the woods. I was an infantry platoon leader and company commander in the 82nd Airborne Division. Um, and then I got out of the Army and I went to consulting. Somebody I worked with in the military said, "Hey, check this place out. I work at KPMG." And I'm like, "What does that mean?" And they're like, "You wear a suit every day and you work on PowerPoint presentations." I was like, "Okay, I'll give that a shot." And then it just kind of clicked for me. I felt like working on projects was really good for me. I felt comfortable going into situations where I didn't really know the outcome and we had to figure it out. I like the idea of how consulting, at least in my experience with it, you go into a client's situation and you're in their world, but you're not of their world, which means you can go from one client to another and pick up things along the way. So after I did a few years at KPMG, I started my own consulting business, which I ran with my wife. And for 12 years, we ended up having offices in 4 cities in the US. And we sold that back in 2012. A former partner of Deloitte bought our company from us. So we sold that. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? And along the way, I'd gone back to school a couple of times, picked up my PhD, and I decided I'm going to put that to use. So I started teaching at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. And up until recently, I've been the director of undergraduate business for Vanderbilt and full-time professor. And now I'm on a leave of absence as I go out and change the world with this new book. So I guess I break it up, Kevin, in 3 areas: military, startup, and then the university.
Yeah, this is really a great journey. How about your day-to-day work experience? How is your day typically look like, and any exciting, challenging parts of your work on daily basis?
My days, I don't have a very specific day depending. I guess it depends on what I'm doing at the moment. So if I'm home and I'm working from my home office, like today is one of those days, I usually do a little bit of writing in the morning. I'm always working on another project. So I have a book coming out later this year that I've been working a lot on. We're trying to get the final manuscript wrapped up. So I'm working on that, do a few interviews or podcast interviews like this or other interviews, meet with my social media team and talk about those things because they're so important in today's world. So a lot of kind of meetings and writing time. Then I do a fair amount of traveling for work. When I'm out traveling, if I'm speaking for an audience, I kind of have a very specific routine I follow when I speak for audiences. So let's say I'm speaking at 9 a.m. I'm up by 6. I always go down to wherever the room is at. If it's in the hotel I'm at, set everything up and then go to the gym and then come back from the gym and get ready for the day and go down. That's kind of my rhythm. And a lot of times I'll speak during the day at an event and then catch a flight to another city and do it again the next day with a different group of people. And everybody, it's fun because everyone's different. And even though I'm drawing from the same material, whether I talk about this current book or books I've written in the past, I'm drawing from the same material, but it's always different how it's delivered because the audience's needs are different. So yeah, I'd say I kind of have my work from home days and I have my on the road days.
What is the secret of your success?
Well, I don't know if I've been successful. That's up for you on the judge. But I guess my thing is that I guess I got myself into a groove of working in a type of work that I'm pretty decent at and I really, really enjoy. And I'm not the one who says, like find something you perfectly love and every day is going to be perfect because it's not that way. Some days you just got to do the expense report and I don't want to do the expense report, but you have to do it. But I would say I try to spend 80-90% of the time doing stuff I really, really love. And I'm fortunate that there's enough people out there that value what I love that they'll pay me for it. So that's probably been the secret of my success, to focus on stuff I really enjoy, do as much of that as I can and just pour myself into it.
How do you see the state of consulting industry nowadays from your point of view?
It's interesting, right? AI is changing so many things. I think consulting's feeling that for sure. At the university, we had lots of students who had come out of the program I was teaching and decide to go into consulting. And I'm sure there's still many of them, doing that every year. But I saw the consulting industry changing in that regard pretty early on. They were kind of slowing down hiring younger consultants to come in. I think a lot of it is because technology is doing many of the things that junior consultants would do. In fact, I think sometimes how do you groom or develop a new consultant into a firm? If somebody's 25, 30 years old or something like that, they come into consulting. Back in the quote unquote day when I was doing that, that was you made PowerPoints and you worked on models in Excel and you did all the things. Well, a lot of those things are done by technology now. So how do you kind of teach them the initial ropes? So I think that's certainly challenging. I think on the other end of it, bringing in work can be challenging because some things that consultants used to get paid to do, AI can help people do. I had a session last week I was in, or 2 weeks ago now. No, it was last week. I was in Dallas, Texas, and I was working with the executive team of a company. Company was about 2,500 people, family-run business, and I was with their top 20 leaders. So the CEO, president of the organization, the leadership team, and we were talking about the disruptions that they're facing in their environment, what's changing. And the night before, I've been told by them that they really wanted to focus on how AI was disrupting their business, their marketplace, their competition, and taking away some things they used to take for granted and putting some new opportunities on the table. And all I did was I put into the tool, to ChatGPT 5.2 at that time, I said, imagine I'm the CEO of this type of company, and I listed their company and their industry, not their specific company, but their industry. If I was thinking about AI, what would I be concerned about? What should I know? What could I do? And it gave me this big answer.
List. Yes.
Yeah. So then I went into the client and we spent about an hour and a half with them talking about how is AI shaping customer expectations, relationship with vendors, their existing competition, where is there opportunity to maybe try to create some new things, et cetera, et cetera. So I did an exercise for about an hour and a half. And I said, I asked the same question to ChatGPT last night. Do you want to see what it told me? And they're like, yes. So I threw it up on screen and I said, okay, here's the first thing it told me. You want me to keep reading? They're like, yes, 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 yes. And the funny thing was it told me about 80% of what they were already saying. But then there were some things in there that it either didn't tell me or it said something that they were like, that won't really work that way. Right. So then the idea became, as I was talking to them, I said, okay, what's the insight from this? And it wasn't that they wasted an hour and a half talking about this. It was very valuable that they talked about it. The insight by looking at the ChatGPT answer was that anybody who gets into our business space can get the 80% answer pretty quickly. So the question then becomes, the 20% is the difference maker. And what's the difference there? It's the wisdom that comes from the experience of doing things, where you realize, like in their situation, they sell a number of products and AI was like, well, package this product with that product. And they're like, no, we've tried that. That doesn't sell. And here's the reasons it doesn't work that way. AI doesn't know that. Or if the AI said, go this particular direction, they're like, yeah, that sounds like an interesting thing, but that's not going to work for this reason. So it's the wisdom side of it. So I think that's really what's changing, and how people provide value in the consulting space isn't necessarily from producing the 100% of everything. It's from the 20% where they add the most value, and really leaning into that, understanding like that insights matter probably more now than ever before, because it isn't like we have a lack of knowledge. It's the insight. And an insight is something that, regardless of whatever industry you're in, an insight is something that few people know and it's valuable. If everybody knows it and it's not valuable, that's not an insight.
That's not an insight, yes.
Yeah, if you're the only one who knows it, and it's nothing, nobody cares about it. Like I'm the only one who might know like my shoe size or something. That doesn't matter. But if I know something and it's valuable, that's an insight. And I need to protect it, build on it, get smarter around it, and help, in consulting, help clients to apply it. But in any world, whether you're a project manager in a manufacturing facility or a shift manager at a restaurant or whatever it might be, much of your value is going to come from your ability to garner wisdom about how the business runs.
Yeah, this is fascinating. So my background is business software, and so we started the podcast last year in February.
I saw your numbers. Those are incredible. I read them ahead of time, and then when the bumper music was playing, it was showing the slides. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
Obviously you're scratching an itch, Kevin, which is great.
Yes. Actually, that's true. And even in terms of consulting, I now started to consult companies in terms of how they can start their podcast. Either they can partner with us, the American Business Podcast, or I just basically consult them with their existing podcasting.
See, that's the thing is I could go on ChatGPT and say, tell me how to create a podcast, and it would give me a bunch of information, but you have the school of hard knocks that has taught you certain things.
That is true. That's true.
That's the differentiator of what you bring to the table.
That is true. And actually, I asked about our podcast to ChatGPT, Gemini, or Copilot, and others. I asked to different LLMs, and they analyze from their own point of view. Like I say, hey, how did it grow so fast? What did they do, etc. So share some insights itself. So, but still, there are some parts that's missing, and that's the insight that you just mentioned.
Yeah, no, it is. Ultimately, it becomes down to like think of any of these AI tools or these large language models as They are my thought partner, not my thought leader. I'm the
Mhm.
thought leader.
Yes, yes. Well, but you actually brought a really important point earlier. So if we are eliminating entry level jobs in a way because we can utilize technology now to perform those tasks, then how we gonna grow the workforce in the future in terms of helping them come to a next level? That's a legitimate question. I mean, we all gotta think about. So how we gonna do that? Then eventually we're gonna be are we going to be relying on the machine equipment just with the AI? Is it what's gonna be? So that's a big question mark. There's a disconnect there nowadays. That's how it looks like it, which is concerning in
Yeah,
terms
I
of.
think there's a disconnect on that. I mean, this is just me on the outside looking in, but just thinking about
Mhm.
building a firm, like, oh gosh, how do we build kind of the bottom of the pyramid, if you will, of all the new
Yes.
employees coming in? But I think there's also lots of other concerns we have in regard to, I worked on this project at the university. We have a thing called the Wondery, which is a wonder and foundry kind of coming together. It's an innovation
Ah.
center at the university, and we were working on different projects. And of course, this was several years ago, so we were doing like more like process automation, robotic process automation type of work, and some model building before AI became so commonly used. And one thing we talked about is, well, if we take this process, let's say we work in accounting, and we take this process that typically a bookkeeper was doing, debits and credits, entering them in all day long, and we automate it. Well, the nice part about that is then the bookkeeper can do all the stuff that's uniquely human, the creativity, the analysis piece, the blah, 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 blah. And it makes a big assumption that they want to do those things. Not that they're not capable of doing those things, just that they even want to. They don't know what it even means to do it. So how are we going to upskill or reskill or just develop people to meet the need of something that seems to be moving so quickly we don't know where it's going at this point? In fact, James Patterson, my co-author, and I, we were on Squawk Box, which is a morning cable show. And Patterson said to them, he goes, every day you have people on here talking about artificial intelligence,
Mhm.
and they all tell you where it's going to be next year. They're all lying. They're full of baloney. Nobody knows where it's going to be next year.
Nobody knows.
Nobody
That
knows.
is a good point. We don't, because see, this is our 131st episode, right, in the American
Yeah.
Business Podcast. I talked to more than 100 business professionals. I mean, solid, right? So I asked similar questions, and AI is a very popular subject. That's why we keep bringing it up, and love to get the insights from our guests. And we get a mix of answers. I mean, some say, "Hey, LLMs, they don't know anything, not yet. Don't believe it. Don't use it much. Forget it." Other group says, "Hey, we don't know." Just like you said, just use it as a tool, but then we'll see what's gonna be.
Mhm.
And another group says, "Hey, it's gonna be all AI. Will take over all the workforce eventually." There's another group, and there is another group that I also met in these conversations, and they say we don't need AI for every single thing. We also need to address some fundamentals and some examples that we talk about in different episodes. That was another one. Like we get these all the time in software business. Like because AI is popular nowadays, they come to us. They're like, how can we utilize AI in our company?
Yeah.
And then we start talking to them. Well, before AI, before having a software, like they need to have some structure in the organization,
Yeah.
for example.
Yeah.
So certain things, whether AI or a straightforward business software cannot address. So some things are really structural or cultural in an organization. They need to address. Then business software can come, AI can come, because eventually they are tools.
Yeah, that's actually kind of, Kevin, where I live my life. I'm not a technologist. I'm probably skating right on the razor's edge of what I know about it. I'm a human behavioralist. That's what I study. That's what I work on. The book is not about what is the next tech disruption. The book is about how do we deal with disruption and use it as fertile ground for innovation and progress in our lives and in our work. And the idea is that I don't know what's going to happen next. I just know that things are going to happen. And we need to have team members and leaders and families that are ready for those disruptions and can handle them. And I also know that when we talk about technology, oftentimes we overestimate what it's going to do in the short term and we underestimate what it's going to do in the long term. So, I remember when the internet came out and everybody, if you have a web page, you're going to be a millionaire.
Yes.
And that wasn't necessarily true, but over the course of time, it's changed so much of almost everything we do as far as having the web. So I think that what we can do is we can recognize that it's kind of interesting, with all the talk about AI, what I hear more often nowadays than ever before is like, what does it mean to be human? And what does it mean to lead people? And how do we execute the human side of our strategy? And we talk about humans are uniquely creative and collaborative. And what does that mean? And how do we tap into it? Which is the cool part that I guess from a philosophical standpoint is probably throughout human history, there hasn't been as much conversation about what does it mean to be a human being than there kind of is going on right now. And
Yes.
I think we'll make some real interesting progress along the way.
Well, you also talk about leadership a little bit. Well, how would you define leadership, and what are the great leadership qualities a good leader must have?
Yeah, so I think leadership is Stephen Covey used a definition of leadership that I kind of am pretty attracted to. He said that leadership is seeing the worth and potential in someone and speaking it to them so clearly that they start to see it in themselves. Let me say that one more time. Leadership is seeing the worth and potential in someone and speaking it to them so clearly that they begin to see it in themselves. So I think a great leader, doesn't just focus in on a couple of their go-to people, but they look at all their people and they say, okay, what's the potential within these people, and how do I elevate that potential to come out so that we can do something collectively cool together? And I think quality-wise, I'm not one that says that great leaders are born. Some people might say, well, I'm not charismatic, so I can't be a great leader. And certainly there is leaders that are charismatic, but there's plenty that aren't, that are great leaders. I think that I'm of the mindset that we are all leaders, whether we have a formal title or not. We can choose to lead ourselves and our own choices and the results that we deliver in life. But ultimately, when we think about the characteristics of what makes someone a great leader, I think it's the ability to cast a vision, purpose, get it clear on that, and help rally people around it. I think it's important to be able to communicate these days effectively as a coach with people and help develop them. I think you need to be able to delegate. I've had students in the university come in and say, I just took over this new the student group, and there's 300 students. What should I do? And I'd like, you better learn how to delegate well. That's a really critical thing. Otherwise, you'll be killing yourself all day long, and nothing productive will necessarily happen across the team. I think they need to be able to give feedback. That's a real critical thing as well. I think that's a real characteristic of someone who can do that. So there's a number of things you can do, but behind the scenes of that, behind the scenes of the behaviors, you want people who have high character and choose to do the right thing because it's the right thing. And they're constantly leading in as learners to build their competence.
Have you had any role models, any mentors who help you shape your career journey over the years?
I've had several. I've been very fortunate. I had some leaders in the military that right, wrong, good, bad, or indifferent, they saw something in me and challenged me and modeled some great behavior for me. Gave me enough rope sometimes where I could get myself into a little bit of trouble, but still survive on the other end of it. So I would say yes, for sure. It's interesting, and they weren't all. So when I got out of the Army, I was a captain, and everybody that was a role model to me wasn't necessarily a colonel or a general. Sometimes they're the sergeant who worked for me or with me. So I think people like Sergeant Hunter was an amazing, sergeant that I work with. It just taught me a lot about humility, and that you want people to choose to follow you, not because you have rank on your shoulder. They want to follow you because they see as you're a person of high integrity. And then I think in business, my wife and I, we had that consulting firm together for so many years, and she was a role model to me. She was also my wife, and we were both had children together. So we had different roles, but one of her roles was she mentored me because there were some things that she's just inherently good at that I'm just not as good at, in vice versa. So I think that, in many ways, she's been a role model to me. I think when I was going back to school and working on my doctorate, the person who was the advisor of my doctoral committee, a guy named Derek Lane, was really good as a role model because he was great at showing me like, what does it mean to care about your students? And also he would just challenge the heck out of us to read more, learn more, do more, and there was more in you. So I think I've been very fortunate to have several role models throughout my life. Some in retrospect, I realized how brilliant and wonderful they were to me. Sometimes it didn't feel that way in the moment, and others where I just knew in the moment, I'm like, gosh, I'm just standing in the right spot at the right time.
If there is one key career lesson that you learned the hard way, what would it be that you can share with us?
I learned a lot of lessons the hard way. Actually, I've had students before at the university. They'll go, "Oh, Professor Ledden, I read your LinkedIn profile. You know, I want to be more like you. How can I do that? No, I don't know why they want to be more like me, but suggest they did. And they would talk about my resume or something like that. And I would say, you know, it's great that I have the resume out there, and I'm glad you found it interesting, some things I've done. But let's be clear, most of the lessons I learned were in the white space. The times I screwed stuff up or made a big mistake or whatever it might be. And that doesn't make the highlight reel on my resume, but that's where I learned a lot of stuff. So I would say that, you know, I've probably learned a few more lessons from the School of Hard Knocks than I needed to. But I remember one time when we had our company, we had one client that I was ready to fire him, to be honest with you. They were just the person who came over and took over the project on the client side was just really difficult, pretty kind of nasty at times to my team members. And I felt like, you know what, I need to let this client go to show my team that I've got their back, type of thing. And letting this client go would have hurt us financially for sure. So I went to the team and I said, I've decided that I'm gonna, you know, fire this client. And they were like, whoa, 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 let's talk it through. You know, we're big people. We can handle some of these things. You can give us some top cover for sure. But instead of firing this client, let's figure out how we use this client and what we can learn from this client opportunity to not only do great for work for them, but also build some skills that make us not, too overly reliant. So I think a lot of what I learned in running the business was the times where I just really kind of messed stuff up. I would fly out to one of our offices we had an office in DC, District of Columbia, and I would fly out to that one. And a lot of times I would take like the early flight, like the 5 a.m. flight, fly out there. The whole time I'm like thinking about, okay, this is my strategy and this is what we're going to do and blah, 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 blah. And by the time I got to the office and they were just coming in for work, I was already there at like 8 a.m. And I was like, all right, get in the conference room. Let's talk about all these wonderful things we're going to do. And they're all looking at me like, what's he talking about? You know, I'm like jumped in the water and I'm swimming, like, here's where we're going. And they're all still standing on the dock and looking at me. And what I realized was the importance of like declaring your intent because sometimes as a leader, you're in your own head, you got these great plans, but you never told everybody why you're doing this or where you're trying to go. And, do that 2 or 3 times, you realize this is pretty troubling behavior I have. So I had to watch that. Or another time, I remember we had a team meeting in one of our offices and there was a conference call going on. There was a phone in the middle of the room for people who were joining us on the conference call. And there was one guy who worked in the office I was at, but he wasn't in the room. He was on the call. And at the time, I don't think I really thought much of it. I probably thought I probably had some meeting in the morning or something personal to attend to. He's on the call. It's all good. And then I walked out of the meeting. I was walking down to my office there and I passed his office and I noticed the door was open and the lights were on. And I knocked on the door and he said, come in. And I said, oh, hey, so glad to see you. I know you're on the call. I just figured I wasn't going to get a chance to see you today. He said, no, I just don't usually go to those calls. I'm not that much into that team thing they do here. They do here. It's my company, right? I'm like, what should I do in that moment? I should have said something like, well, let's talk about that or help you. And like a fool at the moment, I go, oh, okay, well, good seeing you. I close the door. What was that? Right? It was like the elephant in the room right there. And I didn't address it. And guess what, Kevin? It didn't get better. In fact, it got worse. He kept pulling and withdrawing himself more and more. Eventually he left the firm. And I thought, it all in my mind always goes back to that moment where I should have stepped up and had a conversation about what do you mean you're not that much into team things? Help me understand that. And here's where we're trying to go. And here's what, that I didn't do any of that. I was just kind of caught off guard, got busy and never went back to it. And I'd look at something like that and go, that was a mistake. So my point would be that the elephant in the room doesn't get smaller on its own. It just gets bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden you have a 14,000 pound pachyderm walking around your office. And you as a leader need to watch out for that.
Yeah, that's a great insight and a great lesson that you are sharing with us. That's amazing. Well, what are your interests and passions outside of work?
I know it sounds so funny to be like, oh, I love to hike, but I love to hike. I mean, I like to read books and hike. And I know that's like the default setting on LinkedIn, but I do, I've hiked a few pretty decent mountains. I hiked Kilimanjaro with my son, which was a lot of fun. I hiked the highest point in Mexico, which, believe it or not, it's kind of weird. In North America, the 3 highest points, one is in America, one is in the US up in Alaska, one is in Canada, and then the third one is in Mexico. So those are the highest points, Denali, and then Canada's mountain, and then a place called Pico de Orizaba in Mexico. So we hiked that. So I enjoy hiking like that, Appalachian Trail, I'm looking to do something maybe this year, a little bit later on. I have a dual citizenship with Ireland, so I like to go back to Ireland
Oh
and
wow.
check that place out. And yeah, so that's some of the stuff I enjoy doing outside of work.
Yeah, I heard Ireland was beautiful. I never been there. It's on my list, but I heard good things about Ireland, so
Yeah, it's a
must be
beautiful
fun.
place. It is green, like people say. It's a green place. It's a very green
Ah,
place. And I ended up getting my dual citizenship just because we were there in Dublin. My wife and I were there, and we were on. You know how they in cities they have the hop on, hop off buses, like the tour
yes.
buses. So I'm all into that. Like, well, if we go somewhere, it's like go do the tourist thing. That's why you're a
Mm,
tourist. And I got on the bus and we were riding along. And at one point in the ride, the gentleman who was doing all the narration, the tour guide, wasn't talking on the microphone. He was just we were just riding along and he looked at us and he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Well, we live in Nashville." I said, "But I feel like I'm back home because my grandparents are from Ireland." And he said, "Oh, did you know if you have a grandparent from Ireland, you could be a Irish citizen as well?" So we went ahead and did that and learned a lot about our family history along the way. But yeah, I'm
wow.
first and foremost a U.S. citizen. But yeah, it's kind of
Of
fun.
course. Well, it's quite a story. Yes, yes. Thank you for sharing with us. Okay. Um, is there a book, a movie, a show that helped you shape your career perspective over the years?
Wow, that's a great question. I love that. Is there a book, a movie, or a show that helped me? Um, I would think that, yeah, there's a few. I mean, I'm a person of faith, so obviously Scripture was important to me and certainly shaped everything. So I would be wrong if I didn't say, yeah, that would really be a book that has impacted me and every day does. But from a business perspective, I would actually think the Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. You can call it business, you can call it self-help, but it kind of straddles both. But it was really shaping to me. Actually, my wife, that book came out in 1989, as I mentioned earlier. And my wife, I think she read it around 1992 and she put it on my nightstand next to the bed after she read it. She's like, "You need to read this book." And
Mm.
remember at the time, I'm an Army Ranger. I'm like, I got it all figured out. Don't worry about that. I don't need that book. And I kept putting it on the lower part of the nightstand and she'd put it back up to the top. And then I eventually read it. And I'm like, wow, this is really interesting as far as how he laid out the Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. That's why it's so interesting to me now that fast forward 30 plus years later, and Franklin Covey, the company he started, is now taking our book and turned it into a course. It's kind of a full circle moment for me. But I would say that those are a couple of things that have shaped me. And then there's some things that have shaped me, like movie wise, that I guess they've impacted my perspective over the years, just because I saw them at you know different points in my life, like the movie Back to the Future, seeing that in the 80s, right around the time I'm kind of getting out of high school, and just seeing a movie like that is just kind of fun from a perspective of like the creativity of it, but also like the idea of traveling forward and back in time and how you can change things with little decisions you make. So yeah.
What is the best business career advice that you ever received, and what is the worst business career advice you ever received?
I would say the best career advice I've ever received came from my father, who's 94 now. And
Oh,
he told all of us, he had a really good work ethic. He installed phone lines with the telephone company for 30 some years. I think he was there 38 years at the telephone company installing phones and never had a sick day type of thing. Now, he probably went to work sick, no doubt. And we're in a different era these days. I don't encourage anybody to go to work sick and get other people sick. But what he did
mhm.
show was just working hard. And he used to say to me, he said, don't say, if somebody offers you a project to work on, or your leader asks you to do something, just say yes. And you never know where saying yes might get you. So I think that's been a pretty good piece of advice that I've tried to follow. And some of the scariest stuff I've done is from saying yes, but some of the greatest stuff I've done is from saying yes. And then, especially if you say yes and you don't know exactly what you just said yes to, but that's growth. And then probably one of the things I think is not the greatest of advice is to fully tell someone to just follow your passion in life. I think there's a lot of value in following your passion in life and finding something you do that you're passionate about. I'm passionate about my work myself, but you also need to make sure that that thing you're passionate about is something that if it's going to be your business, that you're talented at. So I can tell you I'm passionate about shooting basketball, but I'm not talented at it. Or I can tell you I'm passionate about, painting, but I'm not talented at it. So you need to be passionate about it, also have some talent around it. And then lastly, it's got to be something that people will pay you for that meets the need in the world. And I think if you can overlap those three things, it's great. But if somebody tells you just follow your passions in life, I think they might be giving you not the greatest of advice if they don't say also make sure you're good at it and keep working on your skill set. And also that people will pay you for this particular thing. Otherwise, you may have a hard time making ends meet. But if you can find those three things, talent, passion, and need in the world, you'll be in good shape.
What is your career advice for the next generation professionals?
Working around college students for a long time, there's several different things that stick out to me because most of the students I would work with were undergraduates, 18 to 22 years old. Some things I would tell them, I'll share a couple things if you don't mind. One thing is that,
Sure.
It's still a human game. Life is a human game. It's a team sport. So you need to be good at building relationships with other people. The answer can't just be, well, I'm introverted and I don't want to be around other people. Well, you need to work on that too, because you're going to communicate with other people. You're going to interact with other people. You're going to be put on teams, not just in school, but in life. So get good at working with teammates and being a good team member. That's really important. I think also sometimes students, and we often hear people talk about imposter syndrome. Like, if I get this job or this opportunity, am I the right person to do it? I think it's important to be self-aware and have some humility around things. But I think it's also important to recognize, like, own what you're good at. And if you are invited to be in the meeting or in the project or in that role, then don't second guess it so much that you cripple yourself. Instead, like, all right, I'm at the table. I'm going to be here and I'm going to contribute and I'm going to continue to get better along the way. So don't worry about being an imposter. Just be you, your authentic self, and bring your best to everything you do. I think those are some things that'll be really helpful to folks.
In this episode, is there any question that you had expected me to ask you, but I didn't ask you?
Yeah, what's it like to write with James Patterson? That's the question I get almost.
Okay. Let's talk about it. Please tell us about it.
Yeah, so I met him. I was teaching a class at Vanderbilt called Leading Business Through Times of Crisis. And I would bring in different guest speakers. I had one section every semester that was all guest speaker driven. And we would write case studies around each guest, like very unique case studies that were written. They don't show up in HBR. They don't show up anyplace else. They're just for these guest speakers. And the students would come in and they'd read the case ahead of time, and then we'd come in and have a discussion. So, for example, we had about 25 students in a room, and in would come Doug Parker, who at the time was the CEO of American Airlines, and Sarah Nelson, the president of the Flight Attendants Association. Labor and management would sit down in front of the students and talk to them about dealing with crisis in the aviation industry. So it was really interesting conversations, very high level, and as far as the people that came in, but very real. And one person that came in was James Patterson. And I'll tell people about him a little bit if they don't know him. But James Patterson received a master's in English literature from Vanderbilt. He went to New York and decided, I'm going to work in advertising, even though he had never taken a class in advertising, but he liked writing. So he thought I'd get paid to write. He got a job at a company called J. Walter Thompson, which was the biggest agency at the time. He moved up, became the youngest creative director at J. Walter Thompson North America, became the president of J. Walter Thompson North America, which means he was, at the time, he was also the president over Hill and Knowlton, the big PR firm. And then he left it all to focus on writing. And then he got into writing, and he literally disrupted publishing. Multiple books a year, multiple genres. As I mentioned earlier, he's done very well financially. He has 100 New York Times bestsellers, 74 #1 New York Times bestsellers. I mean, just blew up the industry. And by the time it was all over, actually, he called the presentation that day, The Power of Disruption. And by the time it was over, I was like, I want to study that more. I want to know more about how some people take the ups and downs in life. And he had ups and downs in life and use them to advance, to innovate, to progress. They saw them as fertile ground. So the university sponsored a 2.5-year research project where I studied positive disruptors around the world, which he and I put together in a book. But as far as working with James Patterson, I got more attention and more time with him than I ever thought I would. You go online and you read these stories like, oh, he doesn't write anything. He just has his co-authors write it. And he puts his name on it. Nothing's further from the truth. I'm telling you, when I look at the book right now, it's 50% his words, 50% my words. I probably talk to him even today, even though the book's been out for 4 months. I still talk to him probably 2 or 3 times a week. He's very engaged in this project. And when I talk to other co-authors, they're like, yep, same experience here. So it's been great. He's taught me a couple of things that have really stuck with me. One is that he would say to me sometimes when I would get anxious about a deadline or how the thing's going or whatever, like anybody does.
Mhm.
And he would say to me, "Hey, Patrick, you can drink from the cup of joy or the cup of grief. Your choice. Which one do you want right now?" And I'm like, "Oh, I want the cup of joy." He would say things to me like, "The idea right here needs to be big enough." And what he meant by that is that, and I see this in business books sometimes, and not trying to slight people who write business books. I've written a few myself, but sometimes the idea is worth about 100 pages, but we got to write 300 pages because that's what the publisher wants. And so you just see people that repeat the idea over and over and over. He said,
Mhm.
but our idea has got to be big enough. So we wrote a book that's 300 and some pages long, and it could have been longer. And every chapter could have been longer. And that was really helpful to me because he said, whenever you tackle a project, many of them take around the same amount of time or energy. And some are the ones that you tackle it and you're like, this isn't not worth the effort. The return on investment's not that great on this one. And then you could have tackled one where the idea or the return potential is really, really high. Put the energy there. And that makes sense. But sometimes we get so far into a project. And there's probably people listening to this right now that are so far into a project right now. You're like, I know it's not going to get us the return, but I'm already 70% in. We're afraid to pull the cord on it and just call it a day. And he would say to me, if it's not big enough, don't keep doing it. As he told me, and he told audiences when we're out speaking, because some people are like, why'd you write this particular book, James Patterson? And he would say, because he would say that my time here is finite. What can I do most beautifully? And he felt like this particular book helping people realize when a disruption comes toward them in life, good or bad, instead of just reacting to it, you should choose what to do and lean into your strengths and achieve some different results. And that's really what we're trying to help people do, is recognize that you might have a big vision of what you want to do in life, but you're going to get disrupted along the way, and let us help you think through it now. As the guy from American Airlines, Doug Parker, when he talked to class a couple times, he said to the students, I love this line. He said, a crisis is not the time to start making introductions. That's what Doug Parker said. And it's so true.
Wow.
A
Yes.
crisis is not the time to start to go, oh my gosh, I should know Kevin. I don't know Kevin right now. I wish I'd known him. Well, know Kevin now, not when the crisis hits.
Mhm.
And the same thing is true in disruption, good or bad. Don't wait for the disruption to hit. Start thinking it through. Know yourself better and what you want and where you're strong at. And that's really what we want to try to help people do. But working with Patterson's been a blessing to me and a great experience. And I consider him a friend.
We have a little tradition in the American Business Podcast. So we have a question coming from the previous guest for you to address, and I'll ask you to leave a question here with me so I can ask to our coming guest. So here is a question from our previous guest for you. How are you addressing innovation gap in your company?
Well, because this is what I do with companies all the time, this kind of timing is interesting. The course that we work with Franklin Covey is called Disrupt Everything, Innovate for Impact. So I think that what I do, and what I would continue to do is the same thing that I go out and talk to clients about doing and share with the world about doing, is to recognize when you see a gap in your organization. A lot of times right now, Kevin, I'll talk to CEOs. I'm very fortunate. I get to talk to a lot of executives, but also a lot of frontline team members, which is great. When I talk to executives, with all the disruptions that are going on, whether it's AI or tariffs or supply chain issues, or you list it, whatever it might be, and guess what? There's going to be new ones next year. They're going to keep coming. A lot of those senior leaders, they have a vision of where they want to take the organization. Right? They're saying, okay, in the face of all this, and with our history and what we're strong at, here's the mountain I want to go up next with the team. And then they look over their shoulder and they're like, do I have the right culture, the right people to get there? Are we innovative enough to get there? And they find themselves going like, where are all the great leaders? And what I would suggest to think about is, if you want to close the gap, instead of looking out there saying, where are all the great people, the great leaders who are going to close this gap, look at the people you already have and recognize within them there's potential that's not been tapped into yet. And your job as a leader, as an executive, is to help them understand, in the face of these changes and disruptions, how they can discern what to do next, how they can understand and lean into their strengths, how they can go about accomplishing or achieving results with and through other people, and how they can refine and improve themselves. And those are the type of things we talk about in the book, but it's really about recognizing that I don't need to look out there. I need to look inside myself and inside my team. And my job is to bring that power out. And that's what I would suggest to do to close the innovation gap in most organizations. You can buy the technology in so many ways. And people are working really hard today to invent stuff I heard somebody say the other day, the worst AI you're going to use is the one you're using right now. Tomorrow will be better. And so they're working on that tech side. What you have to do is really work on the human side of your strategy, and how do I close the innovation gap by releasing the talent that I already have my people.
And what question would you like to leave here for our following guest?
Yeah, let's ask the next guest, what's something they're holding on to that they should let go?
Okay, we'll make sure to ask that question. And in the American Business Podcast, is there any question that you would like to ask me?
Yeah, I want to ask you, let's see, Kevin, what question do I want to ask you? I want to ask you, from your perspective, you've had the last, was it 10, 11 months you said in the podcast now,
Yes, correct.
right? And the YouTube stats are amazing, number of followers, number of people who have played.
Yes, we are blessed.
What would you say, can I ask a two-parter?
Sure.
Okay, which guest is stuck with you in your mind to this point? And you can't say me, that's not fair.
Okay.
And then secondly, if you could have anybody sit down and talk to you, who would it be?
Let's see. Well, that's a great question. So, yeah, I had great business leaders in the.
I know they're all great. They're all wonderful.
Yes. So, like, first one comes to my mind. For example, Lisa Escolisi. I talked to her in December in one of our episodes, and she shared a lot of insights about inventing industry and how to create a product, how to go to market, and challenges that you typically see that comes to my mind right away, for example.
So if I go back and look for previous episodes, I can find the one with Lisa.
Yes,
so
absolutely. Yes, that's the one in
back
December.
And look at that one in December.
Yes.
In fact, go back and look at all of Kevin's episodes.
It's even better. Yes. And also, who would I like to have in the American Business Podcast for me to interview? Let's see. Actually, there's a list that I've been actually putting it together. But let's see which one will say. It's hard to say. It is hard to say. I have quite a list.
Well, why don't you tell us one of the future ones you have booked so we all know to look forward to that person?
Yes. I mean, I will say probably it's gonna be in technology. I will say technology and business. That will be my favorite. Like, love to have Microsoft CEO. It will be a great conversation that we can have. Google CEO will be great.
There you go. If somebody knows those people, let them know. Help them
Absolutely. So, because the technology and business is really intertwined, and they really support each other in so many ways. And technology is also a business itself that shows us, that teaches us a lot of things. So in that sense,
true. And it used to be like, oh, I'm a tech business. It's like they're all tech businesses now. Every business is a tech business.
That's a good point. Good point. We all are in a way. Well, that's good. Okay. Well, for those who like to be in touch with you and who like to continue the conversation with you, what is the best way that they can get in touch with you, learn about your organization?
Yeah, probably the best way is just use my name, patrickledden.com. That's right there, patrickledden.com. .com at the end, and off you go. And I put out a weekly newsletter on LinkedIn. It goes out to about 25,000 people about disruption at work. And then I put out a personal newsletter every Thursday that goes out to a mailing list, and it's about disruption in life. So if you're interested in those two topics, every one of them follows a very simple, the idea, a little story, and then an insight or application for you. Best 3-minute read you can have all week.
Patrick, thank you so much for being with us in your busy schedule, and thank you for sharing your professional insights and wisdom with us today.
It was an honor, Kevin. Thanks for having me. Congratulations on your success.
And
everybody listening, make sure you tell 5 other people to check this out. If you do that, Kevin's going to be a real happy guy.
Yes, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Pleasure is all mine. Thank you. And to our audience and to our listeners, we'll be right back after a short break. Thank you very much. Thank you for being with me in the American Business Podcast. If you'd like to be a guest in the American Business Podcast, please send us an email. Our email is guestbooking@americanpodcast.tv. If you'd like to sponsor the American Business Podcast, if you like to advertise your company, your products, and services, you can also send us an email. Grow your business at americanpodcast.tv. I also like to invite you to our website, americanpodcast.tv, to learn more about the American Business Podcast and to learn about coming schedule in the American Business Podcast. Well, we are trying to also have more followers in social media. If you are active in LinkedIn, please scan this QR code and subscribe to our LinkedIn page, and we'll appreciate your support. If you are active in TikTok, please scan this QR code and subscribe to our TikTok page. We'll really appreciate it. If you're in Instagram, please scan this QR code, share, like, and support us in Instagram as well. And Facebook, if you're active in Facebook, please scan this QR code and follow us on Facebook as well. We'll truly appreciate your support. As you know, YouTube is our flagship channel, and we are growing very fast in YouTube. If you haven't done so, please scan this QR code and subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, share. Also add your comments in the chat box. So let's get this conversation rolling, going together. We truly appreciate your support. I'd like to thank you for your help, for your support, and for your interest. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the coming The American Business Podcast episodes. The American Business Podcast is the voice of American business. Thank you very much.